The cold glow of the monitors cast pale reflections on Nancy's focused face. She sat in the surveillance room, where the air reeked of cheap coffee, stale sweat, and strong tobacco. Behind her, the crackle of bending cards and bursts of laughter from a poker game filled the space. Around the table sat a rowdy group of men, lounging casually, their loud jokes and jeers directed at the unlucky loser. "Here's your loss, keep it as a souvenir," someone shouted, and a round of raucous laughter followed. At the head of the table sat the head of security, Anthony, legs spread wide, soaking in the authority and laughter of his subordinates. He had long since laid down the law here, and no one dared challenge him. Nancy had only recently joined the security team, the only woman in a world full of men. Anthony had assigned her to monitor the cameras. To them, she was an outsider, and it showed in every mocking glance and dismissive comment. A female guard, among former military men and hardened veterans of their turf, was simply unthinkable. Nancy finally turned slowly toward them. Her voice cut through the room, instantly silencing the laughter. "Lunch break's been over for a while. You guys planning to get back to work?" A stunned silence fell. The men exchanged glances. "Nancy's throwing a fit now," someone snickered, tossing a card in her direction. All eyes turned to Anthony, waiting for his reaction. He slowly put down his hand of cards, a crooked smile forming on his round face. Well, look who's wide awake. Lunch break is sacred, sweetheart. Why aren't you eating? Skipping meals and nagging others? Just sit tight and stare at your little TV." Nancy raised her hand and pointed to the big clock hanging above the door. It showed that lunch had ended nearly 20 minutes ago. Anthony's face turned a deep shade of red. He slammed his cards on the table. "All right, boys, back to it." The guards rose sluggishly, shooting Nancy irritated looks. They didn't like being ordered around by a woman. One by one, they shuffled out of the room. "Look who's calling the shots now," someone muttered under their breath. Anthony could feel it in his gut. This delicate-looking woman with her refined features had once again challenged his authority. And it made his blood boil. She'd made him back down in front of his own men, and that was unforgivable. "You listen to me, Coster," he growled. "You start barking orders around here again, you'll find out real quick where you belong. One more stunt like that, and you're out of here. You hear me?" His voice was laced with a cold threat that could make anyone's skin crawl. Just then, the radio crackled to life, cutting through the tension. A robotic voice came from the speaker. "Anthony, at the main entrance. The boss's daughter just arrived." Anthony exhaled sharply, tugged up his sagging pants, and mumbled, Well. Marcy's here to see Daddy. On my way." Nancy silently turned back to the monitors. On one of the screens showing the elevators on the first floor, something caught her attention. She froze, staring intently. Her eyes widened. "There's a woman passed out by the elevator," she said, her voice low. Anthony whipped around to look at the screen. He went pale when he saw the limp figure of a pregnant woman. Lying unconscious in the lobby was Marcy, the daughter of the head of the entire corporation. People were already rushing to her. "Listen to me." Anthony barked into the radio, trying to steady himself. "Call an ambulance. Don't leave Marcy's side." He fumbled with his phone, dialed emergency services, and yelled into it like it was a radio. "Get an ambulance here now." Then he turned to Nancy. "Stay on the monitors," he barked, and with a heavy gait, waddled out the door. 5 tense minutes passed before blue uniforms began to appear on the screen. 2 paramedics and a young doctor were kneeling beside Marcy. They were moving quickly, doing something to her, but she remained unconscious, completely still. Nancy watched closely as they spoke urgently, their hands flying in the air, clearly unsure what to do next. She could see hesitation in their movements. That hesitation could cost someone their life. Suddenly, a long-buried memory sparked in Nancy's mind. White coats. Blue scrubs. Blinding lights in the operating room. Once, she'd been known as one of the most promising and gifted surgeons in the city. Nancy Coster. Her hands seemed made to save lives, her mind a machine of precision in moments of crisis. She lived in the space where decisions meant the difference between life and death. And more than once, her skill had tipped the scale toward life. That was her world. Her purpose. But once, as a young, talented, and beautiful surgeon, she caught the attention of a powerful, ruthless chief of surgery who was used to getting whatever he wanted. When he made his move, Nancy turned him down, firmly, clearly. The fallout was brutal. He used his influence to crush her career, drag her name through the mud, and blacklist her in every hospital that mattered. Eventually, he managed to have her license revoked. Just like that, every door closed in her face. Her future was ripped away, replaced by bitterness and despair. That's how Nancy, once a brilliant surgeon, ended up forgotten, buried in a tiny security room. The memory of her fall from grace burned inside her. And now, watching the medics hesitate, something inside her snapped back to life. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the aching need to act. To save someone. That was what she was born to do. Without another thought, Nancy sprang to her feet. Her legs carried her out of the security room and toward the first floor. When Nancy burst into the lobby, chaos greeted her. A crowd had gathered around the motionless body by the elevators. Pale-faced receptionists and frantic security guards hovered nearby, unsure of what to do. In the middle of the confusion, Anthony barked orders and shoved onlookers aside, but his voice was lost in the noise. He looked completely out of his depth, panicked and helpless. Pushing through the crowd, Nancy finally saw Marcy. The pregnant woman lay still and ghostly pale. One glance was enough. Nancy knew she was fading fast. The paramedics, 2 men and a young female doctor, were crouched beside Marcy, whispering urgently. "What's the status?" the doctor asked quietly. "Blood pressure's dropping, pulse is steady," one paramedic replied, fingers pressed to Marcy's wrist. "We don't have OB equipment in the van." "What now?" the second one asked, his voice almost desperate. Nancy saw it clearly, the hesitation, the confusion. And she knew that kind of hesitation could be fatal. Something snapped inside her. She stepped forward. "Move," she commanded, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. The medics turned, startled, eyes locking on the woman in the security uniform. One of the paramedics, a gray-haired man, suddenly went pale, like he'd seen a ghost. His eyes widened. "Nancy? Nancy Coster? Is that really you?" he said, stunned. Nancy was already leaning over Marcy. She didn't look up. "Yes, Kenneth. It's me." The young doctor and the second paramedic glanced at each other, confused. They had no idea who she was or why their senior colleague looked like he'd just seen a legend. Anthony spotted Nancy. His panic turned instantly into blind fury. She had disobeyed a direct order. She'd left her post. And now, in front of everyone, she was making him look powerless. Coster had shown up at the worst possible moment, and for him, that made her the perfect target. "You! What the hell are you doing here? What did I say? Stay at your post." Anthony roared, face purple with rage, fists clenched. But Kenneth stepped in, blocking his path. His voice was firm, steady. "Let her do it." Nancy shot Anthony a hard look. There was something in her eyes, calm, resolute, unstoppable. Anthony froze, stunned into silence. Without wasting a second, Nancy turned to the medics. "Syringe. Needle. Now." The young doctor, still dazed, quickly reached into her bag. Nancy unbuttoned Marcy's blouse, exposing her chest. Her fingers moved fast, expertly feeling for the right spot. Then, without hesitation, she drove the needle between the ribs. A sharp hiss of escaping air followed. While Nancy worked over Marcy with precision, Anthony slowly backed away, seething. His eyes darted toward the elevators. A bitter smile twisted across his face. He slipped into the nearest one and hit the button for the top floor, where the executive offices were. The doors slid shut without a sound. Nancy remained kneeling, her back to the crowd. Her movements were confident, practiced. She was fighting for Marcy's life, refusing to believe it was too late. Then came a soft ding, the elevator doors opened again. A powerful voice shattered the tension. "Where's my daughter? What have you done to her? You killed my Marcy." Everyone turned. Standing in the elevator doorway was Jerome Braun, head of Billionaire Corporation. A pale assistant hovered behind him, but it was Anthony who came scrambling out like a lapdog, circling around his boss, pointing frantically at Nancy. "Jerome, it's her. Cost her. She disobeyed me, she touched your daughter without permission." Braun shoved Anthony aside and rushed toward the scene, dropping to his knees beside his unconscious daughter, and the woman bent over her. His face twisted with anguish. The room held its breath. "Tell me what you did to her. Why isn't she breathing?" Braun's voice cracked with despair. And right then, before anyone could answer, Marcy suddenly jolted, gasping in a deep, ragged breath. The crowd gasped in unison. Someone let out a cry. A wave of stunned relief swept through the room. Braun collapsed next to his daughter, cradling her head in his massive hands. He pressed his ear to her chest, and when he heard her weak but steady breathing, he looked up at Nancy. His eyes, filled with overwhelming gratitude, brimmed with tears. Nancy slowly stood. Kenneth stepped forward, his face glowing. "Nancy, you just saved another life. God, how we've missed you." In front of the shocked billionaire and everyone watching, the other two medics came up to Nancy, shook her hand tightly, and thanked her over and over. Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then growing louder until it filled the lobby. Tears shimmered on Braun's face. He rose heavily to his feet and pulled Nancy into a fatherly embrace, then stepped back and squeezed her hand, unable to speak. Then he turned to Anthony, who stood pale and gasping like a fish out of water. "I should kill you," Braun growled through clenched teeth, his fist raised, but instead, he turned away in disgust, not willing to dirty his hands on a coward and a liar. The paramedics carefully laid Marcy onto a stretcher. Still pale, she turned her head slowly, disoriented and unsure of what had happened. The young doctor leaned over to check on her, while Braun, holding tightly onto Nancy's hand, turned to face the crowd. His voice, which just moments ago had trembled with despair, now rang out deep and firm. "What happened here today wasn't just a miracle," he began, sweeping his gaze over the room. "This incredible woman," he squeezed Nancy's hand even tighter, "gave me my daughter back." Tears welled up in his eyes again, but he quickly blinked them away. The older paramedic couldn't hold back anymore. He burst out, honest and amazed. "What is she even doing here in this role? Nancy Coster is a doctor with a capital D. A real lifesaver. And you've got her dressed like she's in some action movie? Are you out of your minds? She's a genius." A new realization lit up Braun's face. He turned from Kenneth to Nancy, his eyes widening. "I can't let a brilliant mind like hers go to waste in the backrooms of my company," he declared, as if awakening from a fog. Then he turned fully to Nancy, his voice filled with resolve. "Nancy, I want you to accept the position of Chief Medical Officer at our new state-of-the-art medical center. It's equipped with the best technology money can buy, and you'll be able to save lives just like you were born to do. Your salary will be more than generous, and you'll have full freedom to build your own team." Nancy stood frozen, stunned by how quickly her life was turning around. Her heart pounded in her chest as the weight of the offer hit her. Braun suddenly turned, looking around for Anthony, but the disgraced security chief was hiding behind the billionaire's assistant. Braun's face hardened, his voice cold and final. "Come here," he said slowly, each word heavy like a verdict. "Your incompetence, cowardice, and attempt to slander this extraordinary woman won't go unpunished." Anthony turned even paler. His lips quivered. He stammered something. "Jerome, I was loyal, I swear." But Braun ignored the whimpering. He turned back to Nancy, and a bright smile returned to his face. "Nancy, you're our hero." The crowd broke into applause once more, cheering the billionaire's decision. Nancy stood in the middle of it all, finally feeling like the years of injustice and being overlooked had led her here, to something truly extraordinary. 2 months later, Nancy walked down the wide, sunlit hallway of the new medical center, dressed in a crisp white coat, breathing in the scent of fresh paint and disinfectant. Kenneth passed by on his way to an emergency surgery, nodding to her with genuine respect. Nancy smiled back, thinking how wonderful it was that her old colleagues still remembered her, and how many of them had eagerly joined her new team. Meanwhile, the same chief of surgery who had once crushed her career out of spite now paced his luxurious office in a panic, watching his staff vanish one by one, and regretting every step that led him to lose it all. Let me know if you enjoyed this story, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. A brand new story drops tomorrow. Don't miss it.